Hello, everyone, and welcome to our H-1B Q&A with immigration lawyer Peter Roberts. Immigration is one of the toughest challenges for global founders and teams, and few people know the terrain better than Peter Roberts. Having guided countless YC founders, Y Combinator founders, through the US visa process and hosted popular AMAs on Hacker News, he brings world-class expertise in spotting signal, cutting through complexity, and offering practical advice. This Q&A was built with the audience questions which you submitted for this summit. The question that was asked to the audience was, what are your current questions and concerns about the H-1B visa, given all of the news lately? So, Peter, welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here.
I have a very fun story and actually a success story with you. About 4 years ago, I contacted you because my husband was going through this process, and you really helped us with some good advice. He was able to
Oh,
get his interview, the green card, and now he has his passport. So very,
oh,
very
that's so nice to hear.
grateful. Very grateful to you.
That's great.
I
Yeah,
know
I
this was
love
a
to hear that.
surprise.
Yeah. That's so funny. All right. No, that's
Yeah.
great. It is satisfying, with the AMAs and all those things when people do say you actually help them. So
Yes, yeah.
that's
I'm
thank you
a
for
YC
sharing that.
founder. I found you through YC, and I'm, yeah, very grateful for your
Oh.
advice. So
Yeah.
this is very timely. I'm really glad that you're here and you can answer these questions from the audience. I'll go right in. I'll dive in. So
Yeah.
here we go. The first one is, will the number of green card applications increase significantly due to what is happening right now, obviously with the H-1B visas? And will it be harder to get a green card given the higher number of applications?
Yeah. So the impact on the green card is, I would say, is probably more a result of the gold card program and less the result of the H-1B. And there are even other factors at play in terms of determining the number of green card applications. One of the concerns about the gold card program, whatever you think of it, is that it talks about in the language of the proclamation, it refers to replacing existing EB1A and NIW paths. It's unclear what that means, replacing. There's a limited number of green cards, as you all probably know, available depending on your category and country of citizenship. Um, so if the gold card is going to take some of those, that means it's going to be less for the other categories. So I think that's one thing. If it does, there's a good chance it could get shot down, honestly, for a number of reasons. But if it does come to pass, the gold card, that is one of the concerns, is it's going to squeeze out a couple of the other green card paths. So that's my bigger concern. In terms of the H-1B, this $100,000 penalty or payment, however you want to characterize it, is that going to impact the green cards? I mean, I think implicit in the question is people are going to go to that to be able to stay in the US rather than the H-1B. I think that's what they're probably the underlying concern is. And I mean, the green card paths are getting a lot tougher. And not all of them are, you can self-petition. So if you're looking at trying to get agency yourself, you're losing it because you can't get sponsored for an H. You're an F1 student who's graduating or whatever, and you can't, your company's not going to sponsor you for an H because of the cost. So what are your options to stay? I mean, there are other non-immigrant options other than the H, which I won't go into detail here yet, unless maybe somebody asks one of those questions. But
Okay.
in terms of the green card as an option, there are some self-petitioning options, but those are getting much, much harder.
Okay.
So yeah.
Good.
So I don't know really. I think it's changing rapidly in terms of the numbers going up or down. I think that's hard to say. I think it's getting tougher though. There's no question.
Great. And you just alluded to this as well, the fee. How does the new $100,000 fee apply? And does it affect only new H-1B petitions filed after September 2025? And
Hmm.
only beneficiaries outside the US? Any exemptions or carve-outs for startups?
Yeah, good question. So there's very little information about it, so it's not in effect yet. as far as we can tell. There's very little guidance about how it's collected, how it's paid. So we're in the dark mostly now, still on that that proclamation. The what we do know is pretty limited, but what it seems to apply to at a minimum would be new H-1B petitions. New meaning you've never held H-1B status. You got selected in the lottery for next year, right? So it's an annual lottery or a annual quota that's made available starting March 1st, typically. So the next lottery or the next release of H-1Bs would be dealt with next year, March. Um, and those look like that's pretty clear that if you're selected in the lottery and the company files a petition for you next year, that the $100,000 would apply to those filing. But that's probably the only clarity. Will it apply to somebody who has an approved H but doesn't have an H-1B visa stamp yet and goes to France, India, and apply for a visa? Are they going to be subject? I think not, but it's not clear, right? So a lot of this is still to be decided. I think the only thing of certainty is assuming this doesn't get shot down too, because I think there's a lot of flaws with
Okay.
the proclamation, the kind of the basis of it, the rational basis of it. So I think it's going to get delayed and possibly shot down. But if it does come about, that's probably the only clarity, is that for those H's selected in next year's lottery, those would be subject to the proclamation's payment.
Yes, and connected to the stamping that you just said, will the new $250 visa integrity fee from October 1, 2025 be changed or charged on the H-1B stamping too? How should employees or employers budget for it?
Yeah, so that's my understanding, is those will be absolutely will be charged, and it's charged upon visa issuance. So it's not when you schedule the appointment, but what we've seen to date is it would be charged when the visa is issued, kind of a visa issuance fee.
Okay, that makes sense.
Hmm.
And if a candidate changes status inside the US, can we avoid the 100,000 fee entry slash restriction? What are the
Yeah.
risks if they later travel for stamping?
Again, the guidance, this is not there yet.
Okay.
So the feeling is, and we actually have had cases filed since the proclamation came out as a change of employer, right? You're with company A, now you're in H-1B status. Now company B wants to sponsor you. They have not, they've gone through and been approved without an RFE requesting the payment. I mean, it's anecdotal, but the weight of opinion is it doesn't apply to change of employer petitions in the U.S. Again, it's an open question, is if assuming it doesn't apply to that, if you go now and travel back home and need to apply for a visa, is it going to apply at that point when you apply for the visa? Again, the weight of opinion, just opinion though, is no, it wouldn't apply.
Okay, amazing. Then I want to switch over to the lottery and selection mechanics. What's
Hmm.
the current state of the beneficiary-centric selection? Does multiple job offers improve odds? And how should founders approach registrations in 2026?
Well, so the guidance is not out yet on 2026, both in terms of the process and even the fundamental changes. Right now, what's been proposed, it could look nothing like this, but what's proposed is kind of a weighted lottery, where the higher your wage, the better your chance, offered wage, the better your chance of getting selected in the lottery. So right now, the focus is on high wage. That's what this administration is focusing on, that those jobs, those openings will get a much higher chance of getting selected. But again, it hasn't happened yet. So we don't know if that's going to, again, survive. And if it does survive, how they're going to implement it at this point. And whether they're going to allow multiple applications, right, for different companies applying for the same individual. Are they going to allow that? We still don't know. So that guidance should be coming out. I mean, we have some guidance on this proposed change. It's kind of weighted in favor of higher wage jobs, but again, at this point, we really don't know what it's going to look like. But one last thing I want to say is, because of the $100,000 payment, if that does survive, the number of H-1B submissions into the lottery is just going to drop like a stone. So there's a chance, the only reason we do the lottery is because the submissions are exceed the 85,000 available. If the submissions during the initial window of submission, March 1st to March 30th, or whatever it is, are less than the 85, there's no lottery. Everybody who's submitted gets an H or a
Yeah,
chance to get an H.
good point.
Yeah, so that's I think likely what would happen if the $100,000 payment. I mean, how many companies are going to do that?
Right.
You
It
know,
probably favors a lot of the, you know, Silicon Valley companies that are doing well, potentially.
that are doing very, very well.
Very,
Because
very
even
well.
the ones that are doing well, are they going to pay an extra $100,000 for an entry level software
Right.
engineer? I mean,
Unlikely.
maybe, unlikely. Maybe I think it's going to weigh in favor of large, very moneyed tech like OpenAI or,
Mm.
the companies that are just flush with money and, where they're willing to pay really almost anything to get, high talent. But everybody else, I mean, it's common sense. It's just going to go way down. So there may be no lottery next year.
Very interesting. And that's why I wanted to also kind of bring it back to the startups because
Yeah.
that's kind of like where we come from and how can we help them more. So the question here that was submitted is, what are some best strategies to hire an H-1B candidate now? Without paying the 100K, any cap exempt employment, what documentation convinces USCIS that you've seen these days?
Well, yeah, so right now the understanding is that cap exempt are going to be subject to this payment as well. It's not just limited to for-profit companies, but not-for-profit companies that are not subject to the law, historically not subject to the lottery, um, are going to be subject to this payment. So there's probably no way around other than there's a option or a path for an exemption from the $100,000 payment. It's not defined. We don't know what they're looking for, but in the proclamation, it refers to industries, companies, jobs can be exempt if they're serving again, not defined national interest, kind of qualify for this national interest exemption. It's the same words that were used during COVID, that you could get an exemption that allowed you to travel, to get a visa and all those things. It's the same term, but it's hard to know if it's going to be the same standard. But that's going to be the out for payment of this $100,000 fee. Can you show if you're in AI? Maybe it's just if you're an AI job or AI company, you'll be exempt,
Hmm.
or maybe semiconductor, so again, that's to be seen, but that's going to be the only basis. There's really no creative way within the H-1B context
Got it.
to avoid where the creativity is going to be is using other visas, right? Like the O1,
Okay. Yep.
E2, other visas that we're going to be looking at to get people work authorization without having to, pay $100,000. Um,
Okay.
just just one other point on that, not to, I know there's a lot of questions here, but one other point on that is, uh, we do a lot of O1s
Mhm.
because that's kind of the startup visa in a sense. We've noticed definitely problems with that at the consulate level now. So there's a lot of changes going on at both with USCIS and at the consulate level, and we are seeing some challenges now with the O1, less so with USCIS, the first step in the process, and definitely seeing changes at the next step is getting the visa, the O1 visa. But anyway, I think the creativity here is going to be not within the age context, but other visa paths, trying to use them for founders.
Got it. Because actually, the question that I was going to ask right before this was about founder H-1Bs. And
Mhm.
I guess with the O1, you answered that portion. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was a change with the founder H-1Bs in that the administration, both this and the prior, it's been this one too, allows founders to get, I mean, we always did get founders H's, but now it's much easier. to get founders H's. Historically, it was mostly O1s, but typically the founder visa, if there is one, is the O1.
Okay, perfect. And actually, a very interesting point is the remote hybrid setup. So with
Mm,
more of these types of setups, how do we manage LCA work sites, multiple locations, home offices across states, and site
mhm.
visit, readiness? What's good enough evidence?
Yeah, well, great question. I mean, so if you know in advance that someone's going to be where they're going to be working home, and maybe the company has also, brick and mortar office or co-working space, you'll indicate both. Even if they're going to be spending very limited time at one of those, you still would indicate it, even if they're in different states. As long as you indicate it on the LCA and on the H-1B filing, you don't have to file an amended petition if you start working in a location that's not listed on the LCA. So, so one easy solution is you list those locations that are known on the LCA and in the H-1B petition. Um, uh, and I mean, that's really the main thing is to do that. In terms of the work sites, one very, very important point, it's not, uh, I'm not sure it's in the regulations, but as a practical matter, it's required, is that startup or not, but definitely the focus is on startups or early stage companies, is you have to have physical commercially zoned office space, even if the foreign national, the beneficiary of the H, is not working there. So even if they say, I'm going to work 100% from home, right? And it's a remote workforce. Everybody works remotely. You still have to have some space, and it can be a co-working space, but some physical commercially zoned office space where someone could go to work. Even if no one goes there, it needs to be available. In terms of site visits, that those are more and more. Those are happening more and more, and they're going to go to that. If they go to a space, they'll go to the space listed. They're not going to go to a home office. They'll go to the company's offices, and that's where you can't have just virtual
Mm,
space or a mailbox. That'll trigger an RFE and likely a denial. So
wow.
so that is a very basic. It's frustrating because people say I don't need it. No one's
Yeah.
working there. Everybody's remote. You got to do it. Physical commercially zoned office space is required, and typically a desk or even a hot desk or an office at a co-working space is sufficient.
Yeah, and actually you have to be there and pretty much show up, right? Because
Well, that's an open question about whether you actually have to be working there. I mean, it's not fraud. It's the idea is that you could work there, right? If you needed to. Um,
but if they show
you,
up and you're not there, is
and no
that
one's there. I mean, it can raise questions like what's going on, and the response is, well, he's primarily working from home and
okay?
he goes there when needed. Usually, I
That's
mean,
not
you
so bad.
want, yeah, I mean, it usually is fine, even if no one's there. Generally, if somebody goes there once in a while, it's a good thing. But it's really, strictly speaking, not required. You just need to have it for the company to avoid an RFE and denial is some physical space. Yeah.
That's great. And connecting to the practical bridge for founders now is an international entrepreneur parole, so EI, not IER. What are investors, revenue thresholds that actually get approved now? Do you know much about that? Somebody submitted this question.
Yeah. Well, so that program is pretty much dead in the water.
Okay.
Okay. It came out under Obama.
Okay.
And then when Trump took office, they killed it. Was one of the first things they did is they killed the program. Biden brought it back, but they
Okay.
didn't really staff or fund it properly, so it never really got off the ground. And
Okay.
then I don't think while it's been formally killed, it's not a real option, even though
Okay.
there was
So
some talk about
basically,
it.
basically now it's the O1 EB and then EB NIW or
So on the non-immigrant side, it would be the O1 for founders and H-1B and E1, E2 visas, and then on the green card, right, NIW, EB1A for
AB1.
green cards. Yeah.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so then switching a bit to travel stamping, kind of like option.
Mm,
With the interview waiver policies tighten, what stamping delays should H-1B founders expect in late 25? And how do we
hmm
plan around them? Travel freezes, remote work from abroad, that kind
Yeah,
of question.
that's a big issue. So the interview waiver or the in-person, that's gone. So you're going to have an in-person interview now. Um, so that's the volume then is going to increase in terms of the number that need in-person interviews. So there could be some delays because of that, but we really haven't seen that. I think the bigger issue is just across the board. When you go to the consulate now, I don't know if there's been a directive from USCIS or from the administration or State Department, but there are a lot more cases being placed in administrative processing. So when you go and have an interview, one of two things can happen. They approve it. Great. You get your passport back. The other with a visa in a few days, a week. The other is they place it in administrative processing, which can cover any number of things, but essentially it means we want to look at it further. And a lot more cases are now being placed in administrative processing. H's, O's, what can you do as a founder if well, one is you need to be more cautious and conservative about travel, I think. So instead
Mm,
of just, I'm traveling, do I really need to travel?
mm,
Because you could be subject to substantial delays at the consulate. So I think you have to think about that. It's frustrating, of course, but
mm,
I think you have to think about, do I really need to travel? Right? Given that I could be stuck for weeks and weeks,
mm,
right? And not be able to come back or maybe indefinitely even. Um, in terms of if you are going, what I would recommend, whether it's H or O, whatever the visa is make sure you have a conversation with your counsel, immigration counsel, beforehand about questions you might get asked and additional documents that you should bring. So there are definitely things that you can do, assuming that it's not pre-decided when you show up. Like they say, just, administrative processing, we don't really care what you say, but assuming it's an actual review and discussion, there are things that you can prepare for, both in terms of questions and documents. So absolutely talk with your counsel. One of the things is bringing a copy of the filing, bringing proof of residence in the country you're applying in. That's another issue that's changed, is where you can apply. So now you're limited to country of nationality and residence. You can't just apply anywhere in Europe. If you're a French citizen, I'll go to the UK. They won't process you,
wow.
right? So so part of what you have to show is proof of your residence in a country if you're applying outside of your home country or your country of nationality. So there's lots of things that you can prepare for in terms of addressing potential issues that would cause delays. Again, I think at a minimum, you want to bring a copy of the filing, an H or O, probably proof that you've been working in the U.S. and documents related to your ties to the country in which you're applying. So, but
Okay.
really not to support lawyers getting more work, but really you want to make sure you talk with your immigration counsel before. It's not just showing up. It's like it used to be, and it's easy, automatic. It's not that way anymore.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Peter. We have maybe like 5 more minutes left, and we have lots of
Oh
questions.
wow.
But I will just maybe read two more or so questions to get our 5 minutes covered. And then we'll direct people to come to you, obviously, with more questions. And if they want to have counsel or if they already have some, they can go to
Mm,
their lawyer, obviously.
yeah.
So a very interesting one that came up for layoffs or pivots. What are the best practices within the 60-day grace period? Portability, timing, change of status, maybe the B1 bridge or
hmm Yeah.
what are anything
I mean,
there?
yeah, I mean, good question. So the first issue is, when's your last day of employment from the standpoint of when does the 60-day grace period start? So And this is something that causes all sorts of confusion and problems. So immigration's view, USCIS's view is not, it's not the last day paid, it's the last day worked. Last day
Mhm.
you go to the office, last day you have access to email, the company's email. So it's not because we get that question all the time. Well, what if I ask the employer to, give me pay continuation for a month? Instead of severance, can they just pay me for another 4 to 6 weeks so that the 60-day grace period doesn't start for 4 to 6 weeks? That's not the law. The law, at least as applied by immigration, is the last day worked is the start of the 60-day grace period, right? So that's the key question at the beginning, at least. When does the 60-day grace period start? And you want to be very clear about that because that's then going to determine what you need to do and when if you want to stay in the US. So during the 60-day grace period, you're considered invalid H-1B status, no different from when you were working and getting paid. Um, so that means if you want to stay in the US beyond the grace period, you need to do something during that grace period. And essentially, the two options, main options, would be another H, right? You find another employer, and as long as that H is filed during the 60-day grace period, you can stay and start working for that employer based on the filing alone. The other option, kind of most common option, if you don't find anything, I mean, 60 days is not a lot of time. You can do a change. Sorry, you mentioned Lona. You can do a change of status to
Mhm.
visitor status.
Okay.
And again, as long as it's filed during the 60-day grace period, you can stay. Under the Biden administration, they came out with an announcement at one point that they were going to be kind of pretty flexible about accepting for people who've lost their jobs, accepting a B1, B2 visa application. Really, it's B2 is for tourists. B2
Right.
application that allow people to stay if they've laid off, look for other work. Biden obviously is not in office anymore. Has that changed? It hasn't really changed. So I'm not sure if that's just an oversight and it will change. But right now, if you file a change of status to visitor status during the grace period, more often than not, they're getting approved and getting approved for the full 6 months. Just one point on that. This wasn't asked in that, but it's something that we've been asked a lot about. Um, People have been concerned that during the grace period, because the grace period's not automatic, even though it's been treated that way, is that immigration is going to treat you as out of status and issue essentially deportation orders. So there's been a lot of concern about that. I haven't experienced personally that with my clients, but I've heard of other people saying they've received those. They call them notice of intent to appear or notice to appear, NTAs, where you have to show up in an immigration court.
Mhm.
I haven't seen that, so I don't think I would panic. I would treat it as if I were an H-1B worker who's lost his or her job, is that I get the 60-day grace period and then I can take my time to figure out what am I going to do next? Another H-1B, maybe change to B2. But those are going to
Awesome.
be the two options. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. I think we're out of time, but maybe just like some closing remarks and or anything that you think this group of people should know, and maybe some, a question that wasn't asked, but it's very relevant to the times that we are right now.
I mean, the main thing that I'm dealing with just really literally today I touched on it a bit is you have to be very, very careful about travel now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to overstate it and tell people don't travel if you need to see family or important business meeting, but you want to think twice about it and you want to talk with counsel to make sure both if you already have a visa, you're prepared when you re-enter, right? What questions you're going to ask, what
Yep.
documentation you need, and then if you need a visa, to really talk to somebody to make sure you're applying at a place that's appropriate and that when you're applying, you have the right documentation. Because again, this was a formality for years. The last step in the process, unless you had a criminal record, you got your visa. That's
Mhm.
not the case anymore. So you have to take it a lot more seriously about do I need to travel?
Yep.
And if I do and need to get a visa, I need to be very well prepared and also be okay with the idea that I might be stuck for a while. If you're not okay with that idea, you probably don't want to travel.
Got it. So maybe make arrangements that you could be working from another country for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, okay. Amazing. Well, I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you again
You
very much.
too.
And I really appreciated seeing you again. All the
Yeah.
best. Really
Well, say
appreciate
hi to
it.
your husband. Congratulations to him. That's
Yes, thank
great.
you. Very grateful
Yeah.
for you. Thank you.
And if anybody has questions, as you mentioned, feel free to email me.
Yes. Where can they
That's
find you, Peter?
Yeah, so the best is email always for me, and it's just proberts@robertsimmigration.com. And yeah, and I'm pretty good about answering, anybody who emails me. So feel
Okay,
free.
perfect, perfect. Thank you.
All right, great to see you. All right, take care. Good luck, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.